Happy video day, guys. Christina, Brooke here. Today we're going to be doing a highly anticipated video. This is one I asked you guys on my community tab if I should add to my lineup, and you guys said yes. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be doing my Make Up Your Mind rundowns. I'm going to be going over every single one of the eyeshadow palettes that I picked up last month. I'm going to give you guys short little reviews on them. I'll tell you guys how I like them, what I'm thinking about them so far, and I'm also going to tell you how well I did in my Make Up Your Mind of the mimicked palette swatches versus the actual palette swatches, and whether I think that I was able to make a good decision buying the palette, or if I'm disappointed, or if there's something about the palette that just made me kind of like, ugh. We're gonna talk about all of that. So I know you guys have been wanting to see results of like how the Make Up Your Mind ended up turning out. So that's gonna be in this video, and short little reviews. So we're gonna get them all together here. I've got a few palettes this month, okay? So we've got Pat McGrath Utopian Dreams, we've got the Obsession palettes from Huda Beauty, the NARS Climax palette, and Mini Xenon. But before we get into it, if you are not subscribed already, I would love it if you would go ahead and hit subscribe, join the family. I would love to see you again. And also, if you're new to Make Up Your Mind, it is a series that I created here on YouTube, and I have a whole playlist if you want to catch up on them. What I do is when a brand new eyeshadow palette releases, I mimic the color story before I end up picking it up to kind of get an idea on whether I like the color story. So what we're doing today is seeing how close my mimicked color story comes to the actual palette that I picked up. So yeah, this is going to be really fun. I hope you guys enjoy the video. Let's get into it right now. Let's start off with the first palette. So that is the NARS Climax palette. I picked this up in the beginning of August, and oh my goodness, guys, just stare at this beauty. I have to say I'm still completely obsessed with this color story. I think that this palette is gorgeous. I feel like this is an underrated palette, one that probably is not talked about a lot. And it's probably just because NARS is not like a super trendy brand. Even though like they're very known in the makeup industry world, I don't think that they're like talked about a lot on YouTube anymore. And this palette is awesome. I know a lot of their other palettes have been kind of boring, but this one's just insanely good. So when I did my Make Up Your Mind, I thought that this was gonna be cool. I really did, and that's the reason I ended up picking it up. If you guys see the swatches, on the top is always going to be my swatches, and then on the bottom is gonna be the actual palette swatches on every single one of these. So if you guys see what I thought the palette was gonna look like, I remember one of the things that I kept saying was, I'm kind of scared about that blue, because I just didn't understand why there was a blue in here. And in reality, the blue ended up being a little bit deeper in this palette. I'm still gonna say that I still don't think that there needed to be a blue in here. I just think the blue makes it look pretty. Do you know what I mean? Like if you look at this palette, that blue just makes this palette look so pretty, but it didn't really need a blue. Anytime I use the blue, it's usually for the lower lash line. I just don't like blue on the lids. But the cool thing about this one is it is a little bit more of like a gray blue, so it's not an obnoxious blue. I can deal with it. I can deal with it, and I don't really love blue. I'm gonna admit to you guys something, okay? Don't tell anybody, but I'm actually dying to put that all over the lid. I know. That's weird for me to say because I don't like blue, but that is a beautiful blue, okay? So I was kind of hesitant on this palette because I thought it was just gonna be like, why is that blue there? And it's okay. I accept it. I accept the blue. I don't think it needed to be in there, but I accept it. Now, if you look at some of the other colors, I am very pleased with the results on this one because the colors that I thought it was gonna look like were so similar. And I was stoked about this palette when I swatched it out. I was like, oh my goodness, this is gonna be gorgeous. And the greens are the ones that I'm the most happy about because the greens ended up being very similar to the greens that I found in my collection, and I wanted them to be. I wanted them to be because I wanted this palette all in one. And when I looked at these colors, I was like, that could be absolutely gorgeous. Another thing that actually got me really excited is this gold. If you look at the swatch, you can see that the gold is more cool tone, so it's not like that real goldy gold, which I'm so tired of seeing. You guys have known my gold rant. I'm so tired of seeing like that yellow gold that to me is kind of like the useless gold, like the gold that brands like to put in palettes because they bling and people like look at it like kind of like, you know, like when you see sparkly objects and you're like, I kind of want that, and then you take it home and you're like, when am I gonna wear this? That is the gold. That is the gold to me in most palettes, but this is such a wearable gold. This is the most beautiful, simple to use gold. It's a champagne-y gold, but it has enough in it that it doesn't look too champagne, like it has to be used on like inner corner. It actually has a nice gold undertone that it looks so pretty on the full lid. I've actually used that color all over the lid with a little bit of like this brown, with a little bit of this burgundy brown, and it just looks insane. One thing that I am more excited about this palette than my swatch was that this brown is more burgundy brown than even the color that I found. Insanely gorgeous. A nice burgundy brown is where it's at when it comes to brown. I don't know, I just love the richness of a burgundy brown. This palette to me is so worth it. It's so beautiful. I'm in love with it. And then there's also that extra factor of formula, which I don't really think about when I'm deciding whether I want to buy a palette or not, because I need to know, do I like that color story? Because even if the formula is like insane, if I don't wear purple, who cares? This formula is insanely good. Color story, right up my alley. This was awesome. So I have to say, for this Make Up Your Mind, I am so happy with the results, like incredibly happy. I actually think that the original palette is better than my swatches, and it lived up to what I thought it was going to be and even more, because the quality is better and some of the hues are actually even prettier than the ones that I thought that they were going to be, but still in the same color family. I love this thing. So yeah, this has been a huge win for me, and I'm really, really obsessed with this one. So yeah, I think that one was a successful Make Up Your Mind. Let's move on to the Huda Beauty Wild Python. So this is another one that when I did the Make Up Your Mind, I was a little bit leery that I thought that this could look really similar to my Angelica Nikvis and Kaleidos collaboration palette. And I'm gonna say that it does. It does look very similar. I do think, however, that this one had just something a little bit different by having the brown in there, a little bit more colors to make the looks a little bit more neutral if you really wanted to, instead of keeping it all very bright. However, this is an extremely bright palette. I ended up really picking this one up, to be honest, you guys, not because the color story was like speaking to me, not because I really, really needed this one, because I do have that other palette that I need to use, but I picked this one up more just because I wanted to see how close it really was to that other palette, and I'm actually happy I picked this little guy up, okay? So the quality of this ended up being better than I expected. Huda Beauty has been hit or miss with her little minis lately. This one actually was really nice. Now, the metallics in here, a lot of them are that glitterier formula. So it's a little bit more sheer, but it has a lot of glitter in it. It's different. It's not like that dragging, amazing metallic that I'm so used to from Huda Beauty. I think there's like one in here like that, but the rest of them are a little bit more sheer glittery with pigment, so there's pigment there. This one ended up even having more pigment than the palettes that I picked. I think this one has a little bit more impact. This green blue that's in here ended up being a little bit more blue than teal than I thought. It does have a little bit, it does look a little bit more green in the pan, but it went a little bit in a bluier direction than I love, because you guys know my love for blue. So this one actually had a little bit more blue than I anticipated. Now, when it comes to the neons and the peaches, all of those colors were almost spot on to what I thought. Now, there is this shade here. There's this one here that's actually a shifty shade, which I thought it was gonna be more of a peach shifty shade. And if you guys can see, it just depends on how you look at it. It looks green in the swatch and then shifts to peach. So in reality, it was kind of similar, but it has a lot more green in it than I expected, which is fine. I think it was a really cool shade. I'm not bothered by that. I actually think it's nice. Could it have been pretty as a peach as well? Yeah, I could have. But at the end, you know, honestly, I think I like the Huda version better. And I like the color story. I think I like this color story just a tad bit better. I do think that the swatches on this one also helped me kind of see it, so I knew what I was getting into, wasn't shocked by the color story, and if anything, I was pleasantly surprised because I really like the formula. Okay, so moving on to Huda Beauty's Jaguar palette. So this was the other one that I picked up. If you guys know from the Make Up Your Mind, I ended up saying no to Tiger and no to Chameleon, because both of those look like palettes I already had. One looked like the gold palette, the other one looked like the pumpkin spice. If you guys haven't seen that Make Up Your Mind, I would highly recommend you check it out, because if you're looking at these palettes, you may have something similar. But this one got me so excited, and I think in my Make Up Your Mind, this is one of the ones that I was the most excited excited for because I thought it was so unique. I had such a hard time finding this color story in my collection. Like, I went through so many palettes and I think I was able to mimic it to be able to see it. I think that I probably would have liked for this peach right here to have been a little deeper like the one that I found, just because this was so close to my skin tone that when I put it on my lids, it almost kind of like just disappears. Other than that, every single one of the other colors were pretty close. Even the purple, this one here, I actually like the one in the Huda better than the one I found. It's not like an obnoxious purple, it's a subtle purple. These are the kind of purples that I don't mind putting on my lids. I like purple, just not when they're like strong purples. I don't like Barney. I like them to be like a little bit dyed down. This is beautiful. So I think I was able to see this one as well, and I have to say that I'm happy with the results on this one. This one also exceeded my expectations because I think that her formula in this one was just so good. It was even better than the Python one, and the color story was so beautiful. So this one has me happy. I really want to use this more because it's just so beautiful, and yeah, I really like it. So yeah, that one ended up being good too. So we've got 3 for 3 that ended up being pretty good. I'm happy with the results on those 3. Maybe not all the colors I found exact, but enough to be able to see what I was getting myself into for sure. So let's talk about Mini Xenon, okay? So Mini Xenon, I think like this one, to be honest guys, it's not the hardest color story to find in your collection, to be honest. So I don't think that I did this one bad. Let's see. Okay, no, this one actually I got pretty close. I think I got pretty close to this one. I'm lucky when it comes to Natasha Denona because she ends up doing live swatches on her Instagram, which makes it so much easier to match up colors. So I already knew that this was going to have a little bit more blue in it. I already knew that this was going to have a little bit more blue in it as well. So that's why I was able to find these colors really simple rather than just going by her actual rendered swatches. Now, when it comes to this palette, I do like this palette for sure, but I have to say that I haven't gravitated to it lately. I think the real reason is just because you do really smoky lids with this, and lately I haven't wanted to do a smoky eye. So this is like a limiting palette in that sense. I don't grab this to do a lighter look. You can do a lighter look with it. It's just when I go for lighter looks, I want browns or I want something a little bit closer to my skin tone than gray. Gray is also not the most flattering tone on warmed skin tones. Like, it just sometimes makes the eyes look a little weird. So I have heard from a lot of people that they don't love the way gray looks on them. That is not uncommon. Usually gray looks really good on fairer skin tones, and I get that. Now I will say that I think I'm in between. I can get away with wearing gray, but I have to 100% admit to you guys that I like the way that my smoky eyes look better when I use brown or really deep chocolates than I do when I use grays or light grays, okay? So this color story did kind of throw me off because I'm used to seeing smoky eyes not done with gray. But that's okay. This is Natasha Denona's signature smoky eye. She likes to use gray, and I've done it before with this gray, and I think it comes out very beautiful. When it comes to the colors, I think I was able to find it pretty good, except for the silver. The silver in this palette exceeded my expectations. This silver is more beautiful than I thought it would be. It actually has a slight blue sheen in it, and because of that, it just makes it just a tad bit more unique than my other silvers. Is it a palette that I would say go out and buy for the silver? No, because once you put the silver on your lids, to be honest, I mean, it's not going to look so different from your other silvers. But, you know, if you're somebody who loves colors and you want something that's a little different of a silver, yeah, that has a little blue in it and just makes it just look so beautiful. I do think I knew what I was getting into with this one. The only thing that I need to keep on playing with is this black. I like it, but I have seen some horror stories with some people in this black. I actually even saw somebody on Instagram saying that they kept on trying to get into it and it just started getting very hard panned on them. None of those things have happened to me yet, and I have used this palette quite a few times. The black is not a super pigmented black, it's a buildable black, and I actually enjoyed that because I feel like blacks could really mess up your look, like disaster. But this one has been so easy for me to use, so I don't have the horror story with this black yet, but I will say to be continued because I need to use it a little bit more. Maybe one day what I'll do is a strong smoky eye, and we'll try using that black with a strong smoky eye and see what happens. But so far I've liked this palette. I do not think it's going to ever be a go-to for me, and I think I knew that getting into my Make Up Your Mind. I bought it kind of just like a fun little extra palette that if I want to do a smoky eye, I could just throw that in my bag. But I think I might bring like a brown tone palette as well to add a little bit of brown into that smoky eye. All right, so you know what? I'm just gonna end this video with Utopian Dreams. I know that it probably is going to be a little bit on the longer side, but let's just throw her in here. So Utopian Dreams from Pat McGrath. So this was probably the last palette that I picked up in August, and it looks just like this. It's a beautiful, beautiful palette from Pat. I think that the color story was super, super gorgeous. It really is what drew me into buying this palette because I am not a rosy girl. I was hoping that this would not be so rosy. Which I have to say, out of every single one of the palettes, I feel like this is the one that my Make Up Your Mind was slightly off with some of the deeper shades, and I'm happy about that. I'm so happy about that because I was hoping that it would have a little bit more depth to it, because when I do my outer edges, I really like for them to stick out, if you guys can see. I hate it when palettes are just so dull that you can't have the opportunity to do that if you want to. And if you look in my Make Up Your Mind swatches, I actually thought that the deepest shade was going to be quite light. It ended up being this beautiful deep burgundy brown that I love. I love a burgundy brown. You guys have heard me say this. This is a beautiful, beautiful shade. I love that shade. It's probably my favorite matte in the palette. Other than that, some of the other shades, I think I got them pretty decent. This pink ended up being more pink than I would have liked, okay? So I think that I like my swatches better when it comes to the pink. I thought that this was going to be more of like a strong corally peach pink. It ended up being more like a fuchsia pink. When you swatch it, it does die down a little bit, but it ended up being a lot more pink than I would have liked. It was kind of a bummer for me because I actually thought like, oh, that's gonna be so cool because that color is a little bit more peach. I honestly think if that would have been peach, this would have been more unique. I am a little bit disappointed with that because off the swatch, it did look a little bit more peach and it was described more of like a coral. So I guess coral can either go more peach or more pink. They decided to go more pink. I wish it would have gone more peach. Another thing that I was pretty happy was that the gold ended up not being that strong Pat McGrath gold. I ended up using a more yellowy gold, thinking that here goes yellowy gold again. It ended up being a little bit more of a burnt gold, a little bit more acceptable of a gold for me. Like I'm saying, I have so many of the other gold, and I actually ended up buying a lot of that other gold, and then I just like stopped buying it. Like, no more of that gold for me. And I like this gold a lot better. When it comes to these shifty shades, I think that there was no 100% way to know exactly what they were going to look like. But I have to say that the swatches that I got were pretty close in coloration. They are pretty different. You know, I knew that one was going to go more purple. I knew one was going to go more purple. I knew that one was going to go a little bit more gold. So I already knew that going into the palette, and I knew that they were going to be that special formula. So they were going to be very glittery. I didn't realize how glittery. I feel like these are more glittery than any of the other special formulas I have from her. These are like extreme glitters. Like you need, like I would just say, do a glitter glue with it. Otherwise you do end up getting glitter all over your face. I wore it the other day with no glitter glue and I regretted it. Man, did I regret it. And also, I'm happy that this ended up being a brighter champagne-y metallic. I know a lot of people are tired of Pat McGrath putting this color in there, and I have to say that my last palette, the Venus and Floors, had that same basically color in it. So yeah, it would have been nicer if it would have looked closer to my swatch, maybe a little bit less champagne, a little bit more gold in there. But I'm okay with it because with this palette, I think it has worked out for me. So I will say that I like the Pat McGrath version a little bit better than mine, but one thing that I'm very disappointed in, and I can't hide it, is I really wish that this wasn't so hot pink. I wish it was more of like a corally peach, and I think I would have loved this palette, and I think I would have used it more. I think usually what ends up happening is I'm jumping into this color the most to kind of use all over the lid. and it's really my only transition shade that I have in here because I don't like using this one. I will use it, but then it changes my look up completely. Like, it just makes it strong, and if I want something not strong, it just takes me back there, you know? But I do think it's a beautiful palette. Obviously, the formula, beyond the expectations. I knew that this was going to be a good formula. It's something that I considered when I looked at the color story. I liked it. I knew her formula was good, and I decided that this was going to be a mothership I would add to my collection, and I'm happy that I added this one. Out of all the Divine Roses, which I know this isn't a Divine Rose, but I mean, come on, this is a Divine Rose. This is Divine Rose 3, okay? Out of all the Divine Roses, I'm happy that I picked up Divine Rose 3, aka Utopian palette. So for this one, I think one of the main colors in here was not exact, which was that pink. I wish that I would have known it was a little bit more pink, but then again, at the end of the day, I think based off of all the other colors, I was gonna end up picking it up anyways. So that's my rundown of all of these eyeshadow palettes that I have picked up last month, as well as how I did on my Make Up Your Minds for them. I wanna know from you guys, anything you guys want me to change in these videos? What do you want me to do different? Leave me those comments. I tried to make this as fun as possible. I hope I succeeded. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.